Hi, it's Catherine with my update on the steak and egg diet, week 5. Number one, the most important thing to say is my energy is simply now through the roof. None of the winter blues that I usually experience, lots of optimism and motivation. For example, and probably the most important thing, is that since Thanksgiving, and I had eaten some extra foods, because on steak and egg, you go 5 days steak and egg, and then a free day, 1 day. And I had eaten a lot of extra foods. I had added back fruit and some vegetables and definitely some cheese. And my appetite had come back and a little bit, issues with my motivation. But since Thanksgiving, about 2 days after that, everything was going really, really well. Motivation very high, just really feeling good and feeling optimistic. Most important thing about that is that I haven't missed a single workout. I haven't missed a single training session since I got back on steak and egg and I was committed to it. And if I think about Vince Gironda's coaching and some of the things that he's written, certainly he talked about commitment and the commitment to when you do train, how committing to really good form for every rep and for every exercise, and just that commitment to what you're doing. And I think that something about this steak and egg diet, which is definitely an elimination diet, is it's eliminating any of the things that I react to that tend to make me feel depressed or droopy or down. So it's this positive cycle instead of a vicious cycle. So not only am I getting the right amount of nutrition, but I'm also getting the right amount of motivation because what I am eating is actually feeding my motivation. And then I'm training as well, and the training and the nutrition are working together. When I started training harder again after Thanksgiving, because what I figured out was I was trying to get most of my results just from the diet and work not that hard in my training. And I found out that that simply wasn't going to work. That would be fine for maintenance, but I wasn't getting any leaner, I wasn't getting any smaller, any stronger. So I realized I really had to step it up in the gym. And so I've gone back to some of the traditional compound exercises, deadlifts, chest presses, push-ups, lunges, and even back to trying to get my first unassisted pull-up, which I cannot do. And next episode that I do, I will show you the contraption I use to do my chin-ups and my pull-ups. I do use a strap. But the most important thing is that I am not skipping training sessions anymore. And I think that that is due to the amount of nutrition that I'm getting. I was asked on my last live stream about histamines. And I've been doing so much studying about nutrition, and especially about eliminating sugars and grains and seed oils. But I did not see that question. If I could see it, if I tap it, will it come back? No, but maybe put it in again so I can see it. All right. So histamines, it's the one thing I hadn't really heard about. I heard about FODMAPs and knowing about getting into ketosis and all of this kind of stuff. And what was really interesting is I didn't do the research about the histamines until very recently. And here's what happened. As you know, steak and egg, 5 days steak and egg, and then 1 day you add back some other foods. And I had decided to add back cheese. And I noticed that I had some gastrointestinal issues, my joints were swollen, and I thought maybe, I better look at this, but I had no idea when I went to look at histamines. I figured that the histamine foods were going to be like, spinach and tomatoes. But the reality is that the histamine foods are actually fermented foods and fermented dairy. And I was shocked to realize, because I wasn't expecting it, is that histamine levels, histamine foods that cause histamine reactions tend to be dairy and cheese. So I thought I would go ahead and share this list with you from, I believe this is from Medline. All right, here we go. The following foods contain higher levels of histamine: fermented dairy products such as cheese, which is what I had added back, yogurt, sour cream, buttermilk, and kefir. What's really interesting is that when I first started steak and egg, on my 5th days, I make this dessert that's cocoa powder, yogurt, cream cheese, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's an issue. Fermented vegetables such as sauerkraut and kimchi, pickles or pickled veggies, kombucha, cured or fermented meats, which I'm not having at all. The meat I'm at, it's basically steak. Wine, beer, alcohol, and champagne, not an issue. Fermented soy, fermented grains, not an issue. But here we go. And then here's the vegetables. And these are actually, okay, listen to this. There's also a theory that some foods, though not histamine rich themselves, can trigger your cells to release histamine. Guess what they are? These are known as histamine liberators. This theory hasn't been proven scientifically, but here are the histamine liberators. Look at this: tomatoes, eggplant, spinach, vinegar, and tomato ketchup. And I think that's so interesting because so often when I come off of carnivore or when I come off of steak and egg, what I'm craving, what I'm wanting is spinach, eggplant, tomatoes. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And isn't that just the story of those of us who have nutrition issues and have this tendency, especially when I eat foods that don't agree with me, they increase my appetite, they cause me to store fat, and they also lower my enthusiasm and my enjoyment of life. And once again, it goes back to, and I've talked about him before, Luigi Cornaro from the 15th century, who was one of the first food writers and diet writers, back hundreds of years ago, who made a decision that he wasn't going to eat any foods that disagreed with them. And that transformed his life. And I think this is what we're seeing again and again and again, that pay attention to the foods that bother you and give yourself permission to eliminate them if you can in a safe and healthy way. And I just they did a list, low histamine diet tips, and it's amazing how many of these I agree with. Here's the ones that I agree with. Cook all your own meals, that is for sure. Eat foods that are as close to their original form as possible. And this is just general health, I think. Record everything you eat. And I do that. I write everything I'm going to eat down in the morning before I eat it. Record times and dates of uncomfortable symptoms for comparison. And I think that's so important because my joints definitely got swollen after the conventional cheeses I ate. Avoid junk food or anything highly processed, pretty obvious. Don't be too hard on yourself, as this diet is very restrictive. And that's kind of interesting because I don't find it restrictive at all, because listen to what it is. Eat only fresh foods that have been kept in a refrigerator. That's pretty fascinating because when you think of a steak and egg or carnivore or even a ketogenic diet, fresh foods, I mean, that's what they are. The original advice that I was given when I went on my journey to overcome obesity, and this was from Craig Ballantyne, who had turbulence training, was nothing out of a bag or a box. And I think any of you, if you're involved in bodybuilding or health or performance that you need your body for, that this concept of nothing out of a bag or a box is pretty clear and pretty obvious, because anything in a bag and a box has been modified in some way to either make it more delicious or make it last on the shelf longer. And so we don't want to be eating these foods that have any kind of additives or have been processed. And I almost think of it as like a farmer's market diet. At our farmer's market, our local meat producers, our local ranchers will bring their meat to the market. And so you'll have liver and beef, and you'll have fresh eggs, and you'll have local poultry, local pork, and then you'll have all of the vegetables and the fruits that are at the farmer's market. And sometimes you'll also have dairy. And I'm thinking that if you think in terms of how you're going to plan what you're going to eat, if you just think of the foods that you could get at a farmer's market, or if you think in terms of what they say here, that you're eating foods that have been kept in a refrigerator. In other words, they're perishable. They haven't been fermented or treated by a corporation in such a way to make them last longer or to make them more delicious. And this last one here says, talk to your doctor about vitamin and mineral supplements. Consider DAO enzyme supplements, as well as vitamin B6, vitamin C, copper, and zinc. And I just will tell you that since we have come into the era of COVID-19, my husband and I encourage my son to do it, but he's 19, what can you do? That we have been taking vitamin D3, a zinc tablet, and a vitamin C tablet every day. It just seems like a little bit of insurance policy that can't do any harm. I typically don't take any supplements at all. I don't find them necessary. Oh, except for that tablespoon of Bragg's and that half a tablespoon of lemon juice every morning. So obviously I'm getting vitamin C from that. So that is what I'm doing. That is how it is going. And the best part about it, I think, is the improvement in mood. I just feel better, I have more energy, and I am making commitments and I'm keeping them. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is the coolest thing that I think has happened is I finally sat down and figured out GarageBand on my iPad, and yesterday I created a little house music song that I can do, practice my choreography to. And I will put up a little dance video, and I'll probably throw this up here. Most of that stuff I put on my Catherine Gordon channel. Any of like the rando videos, my dance videos, singing videos, stuff in costume, poetry, I throw it on that other channel. But this one I might share here because it really is the result of the better mood, the better motivation, the better feelings of self-worth that I've had since I started doing Vince Gironda's steak and egg diet and this program of committed resistance training 3 times a week. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. Thank you for watching, and as always, be well and eat for yourself. Bye-bye, everybody.